Rocky began to roar again, and it was the fifth night in a row. Jason stood in the doorway of the children's room, staring at the golden retriever, his body tense, staring at a corner of the room and letting out a low warning roar. An attentive and responsible father, Jason never takes any threat lightly, especially when it may be related to his young daughter, Leah. Jason's wife, Emily, is a rational and gentle mother who always tries to explain everything with science and logic. Although she is also aware of Rocky's unusual behavior, she prefers to believe that it is just a natural reaction from the dog, perhaps a sensitivity to a certain smell or sound. Emily's calmness and Jason's caution form a perfect complement, and together they guard the family. Leah is the jewel of their palm, a lovely girl who has just turned 4 years old. She always had an innocent smile on her face, giggling and waving her little hands, seemingly completely unaware of any anomalies happening around her. Her presence instills warmth and hope into the family, and it has become the object that Jason and Emily want to protect the most. And Rocky, the 5-year-old golden retriever, is the true guardian of the family. It is intelligent, loyal, and always keenly aware of subtle changes that humans cannot perceive. Jason knew that Rocky never showed vigilance for no reason, but this time it was bewildering. It's a typical autumn weekend, with warm sunshine during the day and the scent of fallen leaves in the air, but at night, the chill creeps in. The Jason family lives in an old house in the suburbs, built in the 70s of the last century, and although it looks fairly solid on the outside, it has already shown signs of age on the inside. The children's room is located on the west side of the house, with a window facing a grove. The layout of the room is simple, with the crib against the corner and several paintings in pastel tones hanging on the wall, creating a warm atmosphere. However, Jason has recently noticed that one corner of the room always seems to be colder than the others, especially at night, and even a faint airflow can be felt oozing through the cracks in the walls. The wooden floors of old houses occasionally creak slightly, especially in the dead of night. While this environment is not new to adults, it seems to hide a certain uneasiness for the sensitive Rocky. Still, the homely atmosphere of the family has not been broken. Every night, Jason and Emily take turns lulling Leah to sleep, while Rocky stays by the crib like a loyal guard. For Jason, Rocky is not only a pet, but also a part of the family, a silent guardian of Leah's upbringing. However, this apparent calm is being quietly torn apart by some unknown force. Rocky's roar, the chill of the night, and the cold wind in the corner of the wall all hinted at some kind of impending danger. Night fell again, and only the soft glow of the faint night light in the crib in the room. Leah was already asleep, her little hands clutching the puppet beside the bed, and an innocent smile on her face. But Rocky at the bedside was clearly not calm. It was the 5th night in a row, its body tense, its ears pricked up, its eyes fixed on a corner of the room, its mouth emitting a low growl. Jason stood in the doorway, frowning. He had been observing Rocky for a few days and at first thought it was just a dog's accident, but over time he realized that things were not simple. Rocky's anomalous behavior confused him and made him vaguely uneasy. He walked into the room, crouched down, and gently stroked Rocky's head with his hand, trying to calm it, but Rocky only calmed down a little and quickly regained his vigilant stance. "What the hell is it staring at?" Jason muttered to himself, his gaze following Rocky's gaze to the corner of the room. There was nothing there, just an ordinary wall. Emily walked in from the living room with a cup of hot tea in her hand. She looked at Jason and Rocky and whispered, "It may just be sensitive to a certain sound, or smell something we can't perceive. Don't worry too much, dogs can overreact sometimes." Jason nodded, but the doubts in his heart did not dissipate. He carefully inspected every corner of the room, even opening the window to check on the outside, but found nothing out of the ordinary. He also tries to get Rocky out of the children's room, but whenever he does, Rocky breaks free and runs back to Leah's bedside. A few days passed, and there was no improvement in Rocky's behavior. Jason and Emily tried various methods, including placing soothing spray in the room, adjusting the position of furniture, and even replacing the night light, but none of them could calm Rocky. Every night, it remained by Leah's crib, growling under its own breath, as if warning of some unseen threat. Late one night, Jason enters the children's room again to try to figure out the reason behind Rocky's behavior. This time, he noticed something strange: the corners of the room seemed to be colder than the others. He crouched down and lightly touched the wall with his hand, and sure enough, he felt a faint cold wind seeping through the crack in the wall. The cold wind was subtle and almost imperceptible, but Lodge seemed unusually sensitive to it. "Emily, come over here," Jason shouted. Emily walked into the room and watched as Jason was probing the cold air in the corner with his hand. "Maybe there's something wrong with the insulation of the old house," she says, "and the house is a little old, and there may be cracks in the walls." Jason nodded, but the uneasiness in his heart intensified. He began to suspect that there might be a bigger problem behind this cold wind. The next day, Jason decides to take Rocky to the vet for a checkup. He wondered if Rocky's actions were related to health problems. The veterinarian carefully examined Rocky's body, including auscultation, blood tests, and behavioral evaluations, and the results showed that Rocky was completely healthy and had nothing abnormal. The veterinarian reassures Jason, saying, "Dogs can sometimes be particularly sensitive to certain changes in their environment, which can be smells, sounds, or even vibrations. Its behavior may be warning you about something, but it is not necessarily a health problem." Jason's doubts were not alleviated. The veterinarian's words only convinced him that there must be a reason for Rocky's actions, but he had not yet found the answer. Upon returning home, Emily proposes to contact a professional home inspector. "If you don't think the cold wind in the corner is normal, then we'll get someone to check it. Maybe it's a leaking pipe, or maybe there's something wrong with the wall structure." Her calmness and rationality reassured Jason a little. The home inspector was scheduled to arrive 2 days later, and during those 2 days, Jason began to observe Rocky's behavior more closely. He found that Rocky's anomalous reactions seemed to only appear at night, especially in the middle of the night. During the day, Rocky will play with Leah or bask in the sun in the courtyard as usual, but at night, his alertness will quickly increase, as if he has entered some kind of guardian mode. "What the hell is it protecting?" Jason muttered to himself. His gaze fell on the corner again, which seemed to be the focal point of the room. Meanwhile, Emily begins to gather some information from her neighbor, Joanna. Joanna told her that many of the community's older homes had similar problems, such as water seepage from the walls, leaking pipes, and even mold in several homes. "You'd better get it checked as soon as possible, especially in the children's room, because this kind of problem has a big impact on the child's health." Joanna's suggestion reinforces Emily's decision to contact the inspectors. With the arrival of the house inspectors, hidden problems are finally beginning to surface, and Lodge's actions are about to be verified as a real warning. Go on to write, climax, about 800 words. Housing inspectors found serious water damage and structural problems within the walls, including rotting beams and mold. Repairmen revealed that if the problem is not detected in time, it can lead to the partial collapse of the house. Rocky's actions were validated as a warning of potential danger, and families were shocked and grateful. Resolution, about 400 words. The house problem is fixed, and Rocky regains his composure. The Jasons feel safe and welcoming again, and are grateful for Rocky's loyalty and acuity. The story ends with a family reunion and Rocky's disarming. The home inspector arrived as promised, an experienced middle-aged man, who began a full inspection of the house with professional equipment. From the exterior wall to the foundation, from the ceiling to the corner, he moves meticulously. As soon as he walked into the children's room, Rocky stood up and let out a low growl. The inspector crouched down and carefully observed the cracks in the corners of the walls and the source of the cold air. He shines a flashlight on the crack and then pulls out a device to measure the humidity. "The humidity here is too high," the inspector said, frowning, "and there could be serious water damage inside the walls. I need further checking." He pulled out a small detector and scanned it close to the wall. As the dripping sound of the instrument became more and more rapid, the inspector's expression became more solemn. He tapped lightly against the wall, and his voice sounded hollow. The inside of this wall may have rotted. Jason and Emily stood on the sidelines, nervously watching the inspector's movements. Rot? Emily asked, with a hint of unease in her tone. Yes, the inspector nodded. Old houses are prone to this kind of problem if they are not properly maintained. Water may seep into the inside of the wall, causing the wooden beams to rot and even grow mold. If this situation is not dealt with in a timely manner, it can have a serious impact on the structure of the house. To confirm the severity of the problem, the inspector decided to make a small hole in the wall for further inspection. When he used his tool to cut through part of the wall, a musty smell immediately hit his face. Jason and Emily covered their noses and watched as the inspector shone his flashlight into the wall. Sure enough, said the inspector, the beams inside the wall were badly rotted and there was a lot of mold. This situation is very dangerous, especially in the children's room. Mold is a great threat to a child's health, and rotten beams can cause a partial collapse of the house. Jason's face turned pale in an instant. He looked at the scene inside the wall, and then at Rocky who was guarding the side, and his heart was full of mixed emotions. He finally understands that Rocky's actions are not for nothing. It has long been aware of these potential dangers, but it has not been aware of them. The repairman was then called in to carry out an assessment of the overall structure of the house. Their conclusion is even more alarming. If these problems are not detected in time, the part of the house where the children's house is located could collapse within a few months due to the rotting beams. You're very lucky, said the repairman, and if it's too late, the consequences could be dire. The whole family fell into a brief silence. Rocky sat quietly on the sidelines, its eyes tinged with calm, as if waiting for its owner's reaction. Jason walked over, crouched down, and gently stroked Rocky's head. Thank you, Rocky, he whispered, you saved us. Emily's eyes moistened slightly. She picked up Leah and looked at this innocent child, her heart full of gratitude and fear. She whispered, we owe Rocky a big hug. Over the next few weeks, the Jasons began a full restoration of the home. From replacing rotten beams to cleaning up mold to strengthening the overall structure of the house, they do whatever it takes to keep the house safe. The repairman's job continued for 2 full weeks, during which time Rocky's behavior gradually returned to normal. Instead of roaring at the corner, it returned to its calm and loyal state. When all the restoration work was done, the Jasons finally breathed a sigh of relief. The children's room has been renovated, the cracks in the corners have been completely repaired, and there is no longer a trace of musty smell in the air. Jason and Emily watched Leah play in the room while Rocky lay quietly beside her, and the whole family once again felt a sense of security and warmth that had not been felt in a long time. One weekend evening, the whole family sat around the living room with a warm fire burning in the fireplace. Leah crawled around on the carpet, while Rocky stayed by her side as usual, touching her little hands with his nose from time to time. Jason held a cup of hot tea with a hint of emotion in his eyes. He turned to Emily and said, Rocky isn't just our pet, it's part of our family. Its sharpness and loyalty saved us all. Emily smiled and nodded, patting Rocky on the head. Yes, it's our best guardian. At the end of the story, Leah giggles and stretches out her little hand to wrap her arms around Rocky's neck. Rocky licked her face with his tongue, his tail wagging happily. Jason and Emily looked at each other and smiled, feeling an indescribable happiness. Outside the window, the cold wind of the autumn night blows, but inside the house is as warm as spring. Rocky lay quietly on the carpet and closed his eyes, his vigilant nerves finally relaxed.